keeping life together is actually extremely hard. If we're finding that in Britain, and some people certainly are, then the situation in Palestine, particularly in parts of Palestine, and for some people in Palestine, is indeed far, far more serious even than that, by a long chalk. And obviously tonight's meeting is focusing precisely on the impact of this crisis day to day on the ground in Palestine, and what can be done to maintain and build solidarity in this situation. The meeting's been organised by West Midlands PSC, West Midlands Palestine Solidarity Campaign, in alliance with various others, including the Walsall-Cobar Friendship Association, of which I'm chair. I hope it's okay, Naeem asked me to chair the meeting, and that's what I shall endeavour to do. It is a strange format, as we've just been discussing. A number of us are starting to become quite familiar with it and wondering almost like what life was like before Zoom, but I hope we'll find that out again soon. It does require, I think, quite intense concentration, and people do need to be a little bit patient with each other sometimes, but I'm sure we'll all manage that. I'm going to call the four speakers in, four Palestinian speakers in a minute. There is Mahmoud, and forgive me if my pronunciation is going to be awful, I'm sure of that, so just correct me when you introduce yourself, if that's okay. But Mahmoud Zawarha, an activist who founder of the Popular Struggle Coordination Committee in the West Bank and the local coordinator in Al-Masara village, which is south of Bethlehem. So welcome, Mahmoud, and thank you for joining us. There will be Kafia. I can't actually see Kafia on here at the moment, but it's possible she is on the other screen. Let's have a quick look. Well,
Mute. Her name, oh no, she's back again.
Sorry, Helena. Can't hear you. Okay.
Helena, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I did do.
Yeah, okay. Have you been in touch with Kafia? You think she
Yeah.
might?
No,
Yeah.
she's on the screen.
Hello, Kafia. I'm sorry I haven't. Hi,
Hello,
there you
how are
are. Hello, Kafia. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I'm here, but
Great.
I'm sick today, so my voice is not as well.
Thank you for joining us,
Yeah.
Kafia. Kafia,
Okay, you're welcome.
who's head teacher of the girls' school in the village of Kobar, north of Ramallah, who we have links with in Walsall. Mursam Mafraje, and Mursam, I really apologize. I think I mangled your surname terribly. But welcome, and thanks for joining us. Also head teacher at Yadlikia School in the West Bank, north of Jerusalem. And thank you for joining us. And finally, Marwan Dawish, who is Principal Lecturer in Peace Studies at the Centre for Trust, Peace and Social Relations at Coventry University, and a Palestinian activist based now in the UK. So thank you, everyone. Marwan, I'm going to ask you, please, to open the meeting in a moment. For those who weren't with us at the beginning, because it is quite an intense format, it does need to be quite tight, I think. You know, if people can try and keep their comments really focused, and perhaps the initial speakers speak, well, maximum 10 minutes, but perhaps 7 or 8 minutes, if you will, with a chance to come back. And then we'll look to wrap the meeting up by no later than 8:30. Okay, over to you, Marwan, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and welcome. It is an extraordinary experience to have a Palestine Solidarity meeting in Zoom. So, yeah, so welcome everybody, and I hope everybody, you know, and your family is okay and safe. I am going to make probably 4 points for, you know, to contribute to the discussion. I'm not going to talk in details about the situation in the West Bank and Gaza, but my points is sort of a general perspective into this crisis. Okay, so my first point is to say that the traditional concept of security, and specifically in this pandemic, being completely challenged. What I mean, that no weapons, no arms, no clear weapons or militarization can protect us as a communities from this virus. Now, there is a clear, obviously, interdependency between us as people, as communities, as people. And what is become clear, that it is the human security of people that can really protect us. Now, this is, and from this lenses, really, we should be critical of Israel, which is all the time highlighting the militarization, the occupation, and Israel policies that that been for years been raised. So, for example, we don't hear about the Iran nuclear armament. We don't hear about Brexit. We don't hear, and this is, I think it's important for us as an activist and in Palestine to contextualize that, because that's help us to understand that all the time the claim of Israel in security is actually undermined in this corona context. The second point, that lots of talk that COVID-19 kill people without any discrimination, which is true to some extent, but I think we need also to emphasize that COVID-19 is not the great equalizer between people. In fact, it is amplifying, it's highlighting the actual existing inequalities in society, in Palestine and everywhere else. For example, in the UK, those from the UK know the debate, the recent debate, the different rates of death among BMEs and the rest of the society. It is the same discussion raised in the US, that the rates of death among Black, Afro-Caribbean and Africans in the USA is higher. Now, this is important, I think, because in Palestine, we have underfunded, poor health systems, overcrowded cities and refugee camps that make the blockade in Gaza make this crisis even more critical and more important for us to highlight in the context of the occupation. Therefore, the risks are much higher in the poorer, more overpopulated areas. And in that context also, I want to say that Israel can't be really a corona-free if political manipulation, that it is that it's coordinating with the Palestinian Authority. And this is really to give Israel, I think, political and diplomatic leverage. The special coordinator for the Middle East peace process called it as an excellent opportunity of coordination between Israel and the Palestinian. I think it's important to challenge this. It's not that to challenge this narrative, because this is exactly the narrative that Israel wants to highlight, that we should coordinate, we should cooperate, we should compromise, we should find a way to peace, not acknowledging the rights of the Palestinian and violation of international laws and regulations. And I think also we need to highlight that the recent call of the UN General Secretary for calling for a ceasefire around the world and put an end to the violence. This is something that we can build on, we can use as a platform to say that Palestine is under occupation. Palestine is also need to enjoy from this call for ceasefire and an end of the violence and Israel occupation. My last point, and I will finish here, it is something to do with Israel, with the Israeli society. Israel also have although it's under control at the moment of number of infections and number of deaths as a result of COVID-19. However, the health system in Israel is under huge pressure, and it has been for a long time facing cuts and austerity. Now, I want to say this in the context of the occupation. I am saying that the cost for the Israeli ordinary citizen is the fact that Israel investing in the occupation and the cost of the occupation also impacting on the average Israeli person. So that the hospitals, particularly in this case, I mean, Israel lagging behind the OECD in terms of ventilators, in terms of number of doctors per 1,000 person in the population. And this is an important point for us in our advocacy to say that the occupation also costing the Israeli public and the Israeli average person. And this is an illustration, especially in the case of the COVID-19. I think I have a couple of points to say about the West Bank, but I thought I will leave it to hear from Mahmoud and the other speakers, and only if there is a need I could add to that.
That's
okay?
Great. Thank you very much, Marwan. Really clear and an excellent start to the meeting. So thank you. We'll go next then to Mahmoud. And sorry. Yeah, we'll go next to Mahmoud. If I just introduce you again, Mahmoud Zawahra is a founder of the Popular Struggle for the Coordination Committee in occupied West Bank, and also the committee in his village Al-Masara, just south of Bethlehem. So Mahmoud, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to highlight what is happening in Palestine in the time of Corona, and to give examples from the micro level which can at least backlash on Israel and prevent this privilege that Marwan was talking about. Just to give you a very brief about the situation of the health situation of the Palestinians. We have a few hundred Palestinians, more than 400 cases in Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem. We have more than 600 people infected in Israel itself, and we have also more than 600 cases all over the world among Palestinians in diaspora. Yet, if we want to think about the situation in Palestine, we will be able to smell politics in the pandemic situation and in Palestine. First, I would focus on the situation of the workers, which is something that will represent a material between our hands that we can advocate for the Palestinian rights and in such a pandemic situation. First, at the beginning of the coronavirus, Israel let the Palestinian workers to come and work in Israel. And they said that they will let them stay 2 months, which is a period that is enough for, even if they were infected, they will recover. But later on, 1 week later, they threw them at the checkpoints. Thousands of these workers came back and they forced them to come back. And from there, we can see the intention of Israel to spread the coronavirus among Palestinians, especially if we compare the percentage of the infected people in Israel and in Palestine, that there are few compared to Israel. And here we highlight that 75% of the Palestinians infected by coronavirus are workers and the people interacted with them. And this is a clear indicator that there is an intention from the Israeli side to find a way to spread the corona in the occupied Palestine. And that came as a result of their failure to control and in a way the preventive strategy that the Palestinian that they took in advance before the spread. This is the first thing. The second, within the workers still, if we see that those workers there are no system that guarantee their wages. So in the UK, you have your salary whether you go or not in such a situation. But in Palestine, there are no rights for those workers and there are no wages. Who is going to secure the wages of these workers when they stop working? So this is the first point. The second point is on the micro level, if we can see the immorality of the Israeli settlers who are living in West Bank. Today, at the entrance of my village, a settler passed on the road and they throw the clothes of clothes on the road. We are not sure if these clothes are carrying the coronavirus or not. A week ago, at the entrance of the village, medical wastes from a settlement were thrown in the bin at the entrance of the village. We know that such thing is intentionally drawn to spread the coronavirus. In another village, a settler pretended that he is a Solidarity International person, came to a village and he distributed clothes to the children. That was also another way how to spread the coronavirus among Palestinians. Another issue which is very obvious and clear is the Israeli policies in East Jerusalem and around the suburbs of Jerusalem where the Palestinian headquarters are, when they prevent the Palestinian volunteers to sanitize the roads and the buildings and the people, and they prevent any activity for any Palestinian in Jerusalem. And even if we go to the villages in Area B and Area C, it's the struggle over sovereignty, because the Palestinians has practiced through the emergency committees and establishing a kind of control around their people. This provoked the Israeli government. This provoked the Israeli soldiers to see this organization that is coming from bottom among people with no authority in such areas, but the people themselves organize themselves through village committees, through emergency committees to control who is coming in and out and to organize the life of the people. This has provoked the Israeli army, and they attacked them. They removed the Palestinian flags. They do not want to see the Palestinian organized. And now this virginity on this area, despite the fact it is symbolic, by showing a Palestinian doctor at the entrance of the villages, testing the temperature of the people and giving sanitizations to the people, this has provoked the Israelis. And that is another way that they want to show their sovereignty on the Palestinian countryside. That's another issue that we want to highlight through this. Another issue is the level. If we see how such attacks have been escalated against the Palestinian rural communities in the Jordan Valley, in the South Hebron Hills, in many communities in the occupied Palestine. And they took the chance that there are no, the Palestinians are locked down, there are no internationals, there are no Israeli activists, so they took the opportunity to attack Palestinians and to grab more land. So this is happening all during the time of Corona, when the Palestinians are locked down and the settlers want to have this interact with Palestinian to annex the land. On a higher level in Israel, the struggle now, is it the right time to annex the entire of Area C, or we are going to do it gradually? And actually the crisis, one of the crises between Gantz and Netanyahu is how we are going to annex Area C. Gantz is with the approach of gradually annexing the Area C, and many want to take it once. So this is on the national level, and they want to take the opportunity from by the time of Corona to do that. Another issue which can also highlight what Israel is doing is the medical deal between Israel and Turkey. Turkey agreed to supply Israel with equipments, with medical equipments, under one condition, which is to give the Palestinians the same quantity. Israel refused that. Israel refused to let Turkey supply the Palestinians with the medical aids. And you can imagine this situation in Gaza, how Gaza is surviving at the time of Corona, if it is in lockdown even before the coronavirus. Another positive side that I want to highlight, which is the last issue, is about the importance of Area C as the natural resources of the Palestinians. Because in a way or another, the hammer on the Palestinians and the other virus is the occupation and the Trump's plan, which is advocating to annex 40% of Area C. Now, what I found in my village, that coronavirus has brought the people back to their land. Everyone is now working in his land, cultivating the land, putting the seeds in the ground, because it's spring and there will be a good harvest for the Palestinians, that they can be economically independent. And that's something I think is a message and form an insight for the Palestinians, what kind of a future state we will have if we are not able to eat from what we are planting and we are not wearing from what we are manufacturing. This is the lesson that we learned from the coronavirus. In this time, all the people in my village are in the fields. Everyone is now cultivating his land because they know where is the treasure. The treasure is in Area C. The treasure is coming back to the land and cultivating their land in order to be able to produce what they can eat and to manufacture what they can, to wear what they can manufacture. This is something relied on the social capital of the Palestinian society that maintained them to live 77 decades under the Israeli occupation. That is where we can find ourselves. Working in Israel, it can stop at any time. All these neoliberal economic policies fell down. What lasts and stand is the social capital, is the self-organizing, is by coming back to your land and cultivating your land. And this is amazing initiatives coming from the villages. And this situation can really feed the cities and the refugee camps. Again, we know that this will pass, but we learned a great lesson as Palestinians, how to see the future through the lenses of our land, our attachment to our land. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mahmoud. So we'll go to Kafia. Kafia Shannon, for those who've come on since we did the quick introductions at the start, is head teacher of the girls' high school in the village of Shoba, near Ramallah, north of Ramallah. So Kafia, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? We are good here in Palestine, and I have to speak as my colleagues said, and I have also many photos I can share with you about what they talk about, the points where they make the sterilization for people who enter the villages, and for the people who work in Israel and who come back in a bad condition. They throw them on the points, and they let them come back. And while they were there, nobody make test for them. So we have 87% of the cases infected with the virus. They are because of these workers. In Palestine, until this moment, we have 449 cases of coronavirus, 340 in the West Bank, and 15 cases in Gaza, and 120 cases in Jerusalem. 3 dead cases, only 3 dead cases. The cured cases are 69 cases. And the prevention done from the Ministry of Health and of the Palestinian ministries, they close all the region. They close the way between the villages and countries. So the cases are lowered because of that condition. But after that, Israeli sent the workers to their villages, and this what make the viruses spread in the 3rd week. And now today they announced that they will reduce the closure on the countries, but they will the closure between countries will remain. So we wish this finished. Also, although this happened and the coronavirus is still spreading, the Israeli soldier still come to the villages and the countries. They arrest people, and last week they were in Kober, and we are waiting for them. They want to destroy a house in Kober. They said they will come soon, and every night we are waiting for them. And when they come, they bring dogs, and they arrest people, and they force them to wear masks that are used by other soldiers. And this is a very bad condition. Now I want also the critical point here is the prisoners in Israeli presents. We have 5,000 prisoners, 41 women, and 180 kids, 430 administrative detentions, and this this make us worry about what will happen to the prisoners, because they live in a very bad conditions, and we wish this crisis will finish and the prisoners get away. Finally, I want to share some photos, and also I want to say, as my colleagues said, we planted the gardens, and we plant za'atar, bees, and in order to destroy the boring, because no one go to school or to work or anywhere. And thank you for joining tonight, and I will share the photo now on the chat.
Thank you, Kafia.
You're welcome. Sorry.
Okay, are you going to put the share screen up? Naeem, you've facilitated that, have you?
Well, I had disabled the thing. Shall I?
Well, I think Kafia would like to show a couple of pictures. If you
Okay,
can just
well, I will allow just
repurpose it for the moment. Thank you.
Yes, she should be able to share it.
Yes, well, I can certainly see them. I hope others can.
Yeah, I can see them.
You can see the pictures.
Yes.
This is the point where they in the checkpoint, Israeli soldiers in the checkpoint, they wear the mask. Here, when they enter the houses to arrest someone, here the workers in Israel, while they're coming back home, you can see the crowdness, and it is the way to transfer the virus. Here, the love point, or something like, not love as real love, it is the points where people make emergency points. They sterilize everyone who come to any village in order to keep the village safe. And this also another one. This is the soldiers shooting for the people. And
yeah, thank you, Kafia. Thank you.
You will come. And this is some from the garden, some pictures from the garden.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, some of us are doing a little bit of planting to keep our minds occupied with less than desperate things. So that's good. Thanks, Kafia. We can ask you to come back later in the discussion, if that's okay. Certainly to sum up, and of course indicate at any point if you want to come in. So finally, to the introduction to this meeting, Mutasam from Bedlikia, also head teacher at school there. Over to you, Mutasam. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, my friend, for giving me this chance. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving us this opportunity to talk and to show you what we have. I'd love to thank my friends Marwan Darwish also, and Mahmoud Zawahra and Kafia Shannan for giving this great speech and information about the situation here. I would do my best not to repeat what they said in order to save the time, actually. And well, I'm glad that they were able to give a clear image for you about the situation here in Palestine and Palestinian areas, and what we are facing actually, and the real challenges that we have, which make coronavirus actually affects go deeper and more effective on the Palestinian than other nations due to these situations that my friends talk about. Well, calculations of coronavirus also my friends talked about. I would like to add that here we were lucky to have such, let's say, a smart government who were able to control the spread of this virus before other nations, even before other much more developed and powerful countries. We were like in a good situation concerning this issue. But still, we have our private and our own challenges concerning the occupation, as my friend said. We, the Palestinians, we have really smart people, smart leaders. We have really good and great human being who can even lead the world in any crisis. But still, this leadership, this huge and tremendous power that the Palestinians have is being controlled by the occupation and by the lack of movement that put on them and restricted their ability. The most, now we have one of the most important challenges is the workers who are working inside Israel, who are more than 130,000 people working in Israel. And after this crisis, some of them, according to Palestinian rules, have to stay at home, and some of them like, let's say, agreed and they come back to their homes, and some of them stayed in Israel because of their bad situation economically, actually. Now, talking about these workers and their situations, as my friend said, is the real challenge, because they are not like British workers or like any international worker in the world. Actually, these workers, and many of them are my cousins and my friends and my colleagues also, they don't have rights. This is one of the most things that I can say. They just go, work, and get money, and being like exploited by many resources. They don't have rights. So this is one of the most important challenge. Talking about their health. Suppose there are real cases actually. Many of them get infected, got this virus, and without any even basic care. As my friend said, they were just thrown in on the checkpoints and taken care by the Palestinian health crews and workers. So this is the challenge concerning the workers. As for the education in Palestine, maybe this is another point that I would like to focus on also. It doesn't differ from any other situation in other countries. We are facing crisis in the education just as other countries, but moreover, we have the occupation, which make the thing also more complicated concerning the education. We are till this moment, we are staying home, no schools, just as anywhere. Our Prime Minister this night has given a speech concerning some facilities in some sections in the Palestinian life, but talking about education, we are still having the same. The online teaching and such stuff seems not to be working well, but we have some good tries, and some smart people, teachers, headmasters as well, are doing good job. Also, I'd really love to thank my friends for talking about the issue of farming and cultivating the land, which is, yes, as my friend Mahmoud Zawahri said, one of the most important lessons that the Palestinians learned in this crisis is that their land is the basic thing that they should take care of. And I see also, as I live in my own village, the passion of people returned back. They started cultivating their land, like they are started to feel that our land is the security built for us, no matter how much money we can make by working in Israel. But Israel is not secure, it's not healthy, we still don't have any rights. So many, as my friend said, started to know and focus on their land. And maybe one of the most important points is to support the Palestinian farmer, to support him, like making him depend on himself, like supporting a fisher by teaching him to fish. In the case of the Palestinian workers, we support him by offering him any possible support to cultivate his land and survive by depending on himself. In my village, actually, where I live, also we have 7 infected people. They are in very good situation. They're being treated very well by the Palestinian health center also, and they are recovering. I think other than this, the things are fine. Well, concerning the Israeli occupation, we heard in the news also when we saw that some on the borders we have some issues with opening opening the borders for the workers to go work without any checking, without any testing, without any health care, which also for sure they will be dangerous for the life of the families of their workers when these workers come back from their work. To compare between a Palestinian worker or any other worker in the world, there is no comparison, because even the most important need for a worker, which is health check and health test in his work, he will not get this. He is just doing his own adventure, his own survival by his own, without being taken care inside. Now, the workers, as I said to you, they are a big number of the Palestinian people, and they are participating with a great deal in the Palestinian economy as well. But we are facing a problem with them concerning the situation with the occupation, because simply the occupation don't care about the workers, and they simply don't have rights or any compensating. For example, we have a great deal of them now staying at home. Do they have salaries? Does the Israeli government give them salaries or guarantee that they take even the minimum salary? The answer is no. In the same time that Israel is giving its people something like $200 for each kid. Every family is getting something like $200 for each kid that they have inside Israel. Now, the same worker who worked for this family, because many of the Palestinian workers work for Israeli families, they are not included, simply because they don't have this included in their rights or any rights at all.
Okay,
So,
Thank you, Mother Samit.
That's it.
If I can, thank you very much indeed for that. You can have an opportunity to come back later. I think we better move to opening the meeting up to see what questions people have, what observations they have. But thank you for that very full description of life on the front line, really, because your village is right up against the apartheid fence, isn't it? Right at the edge of the West Bank territory.
That's true.
Okay, so I don't have a lot of indications here at the moment. Annie, you might just have left your hand up, or you might want to say something. Shaking your head, right. Ursula, an observation from you. You have to unmute yourself, remember.
I've done it. Just an observation in that obviously the situation in Palestine is horrendous with the occupation. So I can't begin to imagine what life is like with the virus. But having said that, you seem to be incredibly well organized. I mean, looking at the photographs that Kafia showed, the difference between all the masks and the equipment that the Israeli soldiers have, and the masks or lack of masks that Palestinians have, and being forced to sort of queue so closely together, you would expect the virus to be spreading sort of rampantly, and yet Palestine seems to be so well organised that the actual number of cases are being kept to what to me seem to be surprisingly small numbers. So it's an observation, and compared with what's happening here, where you would have thought we should be, right at the forefront of tackling the virus, we're not. The numbers of deaths over here are staggering. So yeah, that's my observation.
Okay, thank you. I will ask all 4 speakers to come back at the end, so you might want to make notes as we go through of anything to respond to, but obviously you can interject as we go along. But perhaps we'll take 1 or 2 more questions and observations first of all, if anyone has. You can either indicate in the chat, or you can put your little blue hand up. You can wave a paper vigorously if you will, but I won't see you all at once, of course, because there's more than one screen full.
I think Khurram wanted to say something.
Fire ahead. Sorry, I haven't picked that up. Yep. Fire ahead, Marwan. Yep, Marwan.
Yeah, I'm here.
Khurram, right. Sorry, Naeem, you haven't put in the chat. Who did you say wanted to say something? I thought you said Marwan.
No, Khurram.
All right. Sorry. Go on then, Khurram. Yeah. Sorry, Khurram.
The question I wanted to ask was, the health situation there is dire, but you don't have like a functioning government like we do. What could we do in the West Midlands to help you, like using social media, or do you have any other journalism or any other frontline media services that are on your side that we would be able to rely on for truthful information?
Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, I'll chuck something in while people are thinking. Developing the point that it was clear that the Palestinian authorities, obviously with limited jurisdiction, but nevertheless, actually moved very, very swiftly. I think the first infections were around Bethlehem, if I've understood that correctly. And immediately, there were plans afoot. And you compare that to the situation here, and it is remarkable, and from our point of view, pretty desperate, where the government here, I'm afraid quite deliberately, failed to act for over 2 weeks, really up to 3 weeks. Crucial time where the thousands of people who are now dying picked up the infection. So I'm underlining that point really, and just wondering perhaps if we can reflect further on it. And that's, of course, without all the machinations of the Israeli authorities, who I believe have been putting Palestinian workers through the wall and through the fence as soon as they've discovered they become infected, but without taking any action whatsoever to protect or defend their health. So that's really just extending the point made by a couple of others already, but it is the thing that from this end strikes us really quite dramatically. The other thing to ask, I suppose, is how far this is, and speakers may not be in a position to answer much about this, but how far is this opening up divisions within the occupation forces within Israeli society? The Israeli authorities have themselves been deeply divided, as we know, really about whether to be utterly vicious or totally vicious. I mean, it's two versions of the same horror, but nevertheless, the Israeli ruling class has been split, and I wonder how far that impacts at all on what's happening with the occupation with the virus. Any more? Naeem, I see you haven't posted anything else in the chats.
No, can I just make an observation? Can you hear me?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that, I mean, next month, May, is going to be the Nakba month as well. And I think as campaign for Palestine, we do several things and organize several events and everything else. But under the current circumstances, it's very difficult for us to do that. And yet there are actually quite issues like Turkey being refused to send equipment to Palestine and Israel, because Israel wouldn't agree that equipment should go to Palestine. What can we do under these circumstances to pressurize the Israeli state to actually look after the Palestinians under this from the threat of coronavirus?
Anyone else?
Could I say something, Martin?
Of course you can, Stuart. Yes, fire ahead.
The main point I want to make is that, and the Palestinian comrades may not be absolutely familiar with this, but in the Saturday edition of the Financial Times, which is a sort of liberal conservative newspaper, there was quite an interesting article saying Arab medics dominate Israelis' frontline fight. And it reports that a leading Palestinian Arab medic had been called by no less than Benjamin Netanyahu for consultation. And it makes a number of points. Firstly, that there's a significant overrepresentation of Arabs in the medical services. They make up 20% of the population, but 50% of the pharmacists, a quarter of the nurses, and 20% of the doctors, but many doctors who play a senior position. And you very rarely get in the mainstream conservative press any critical notes about Israel. And the interviewer asks, when he was asked if the Arab community in Israel could expect receive equal access to coronavirus care as the Jewish majority, Dr. Syed gave a diplomatic answer. He said, "We know it is not a secret that resources in this country are not equally distributed, but I have to look at a glass half full." So a very interesting and sort of clear critical view of Israel and the discrimination against the Arab minority. One of the other things I'd heard that, and the article makes it, is there's a lot of coronavirus in the Orthodox Jewish community, the ultra-Orthodox, and they've often refused to implement any social distancing. And whereas imams have been fined by the authorities for having services, the ultra-Orthodox who've had services with no social distancing have not been fined. Another discriminatory reality of Israeli society. So that was interesting that you get a critical view of Israeli society. I'd like, towards the end, Martin, like to mention a meeting that Paul Kellerman is speaking at in May. Okay.
I should mention it now if I was you, because time is quite tight. So
okay, right. As people know, there's been a significant shift in the Labour leadership. Lisa Nandy, and you can read this on the Stop the War Coalition website, has said that in interviews with Andrew Neil from the BBC, that to criticise Israeli repression in the West Bank is anti-Semitic. Extraordinary stuff, she's saying. And Paul Kellerman is going to speak about some of the history of the Labour Party support for Zionism, but also the politics of the new leadership. That's at 7:30, Tuesday the 12th of May, on a Zoom meeting, and we will be circulating details of it for comrades involved in the Palestine movement and Stop the War supporters. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Is she,
sorry, excuse me. Scroll through the chair, please. Tony Pierce is next. Tony.
Thank you. One of the big issues over here is the lack of personal protective equipment, especially for medical staff, doctors and nurses. Is that an issue in Palestine?
Goran?
Is Lisa Nandy the new shadow foreign secretary, or is that wrong on Twitter?
No, that is correct, I'm afraid.
What?
Yep, I'm offering a slightly biased opinion as the chair, but that is correct, I'm afraid.
Get rid of her.
Well, indeed. Okay, right. Anyone else like to offer an opinion or a question before I ask our speakers to come back in? Kafia has had trouble with her connection, and she may or may not be able to re-establish it by the end of the meeting. So, anyone else? Last call, really, for any points anyone wishes to make.
Can I just make one more point?
Remember, I can only see one of the screens at a time, so do use the blue hand if you can. Sorry. Naeem, you were saying something.
I just want us to consider what we're going to do next month in May in terms of organizing for Palestine, because a lot of the activities we do, like campaigning out for HSBC to divest from Palestine, from Israel and from the occupation, and things like that, and also the Puma campaign, all those have not gone digital, and there is not that much activity. So I think we need to consider what we're going to do in May, because May has normally been a month of activities on Palestine.
Do you have any initial proposals?
Well, I think maybe we should actually organize a similar meeting like this, but on a wider scale. There was also plans, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign was looking at the idea of showing films as well in the month. And maybe we can get some of those being seen on the YouTube or whatever. And I think, again, we need to do some digital campaigning as well, which is, again, what Palestine Solidarity Campaign is doing. But they all relied on, public protests, demonstrations outside banks and things like that. But they cannot happen. So we need to find some new ways of doing that.
Okay, if anyone has any thoughts on that, you can pop them up.
Can I just mention something?
Yeah, Stuart, just let me finish this point if I can. So, if anyone has any thoughts on that, if you can put them up in the chat or message Naeem. If you want to say it succinctly in a minute on here, please do. We are now at 8:10. So I did say at the start, we need to finish by 8:30 because it's quite difficult to maintain the focus in these meetings for more than about an hour and a half, I would suggest. So very quick responses if we can. Stuart, do you want to come back in quickly?
Yeah, my point is that the Nakbar Day, I think, is the 18th of May. The lockdown by the government is to the beginning of May. It's unlikely, but it's not ruled out that by the 18th we couldn't have some sort of symbolic protest in the centre of Birmingham or something. So I think that we should review that. Obviously, we can have Zoom meetings as well, but I don't think it's ruled out, although unlikely, that we can't have sort of some public protest.
Do you want to say anything?
Okay, I think if it's all right, we do need to move towards a close. There is obviously a very uncertain situation, and what can be done in the way of socially distanced socially distanced protests, we'll have to see. I mean, 1 or 2 little plans for Workers' Memorial Day next Tuesday, and as long as we keep people 2 meters apart and abide by the rules, then I think we should be fine. Right, there's a few people indicating now. So I'm going to take Mary and then Adi, and then we will draw things to a close. So first of all, Mary.
I'd just like to state the obvious, that it's incredible to hear the detail of how our comrades in Palestine are coping with this terrible assault. And I hope that I guess there's a video of this meeting, and I hope it's going to be distributed as widely as possible through any links that we have, along with suggested actions that people can take, because I think it's when you hear the detail of how people's lives are impacted, and as Focus said before, how the Palestinian organisations are responding. This needs to be heard as widely as possible.
Thanks, Mary. Adi?
Yeah, just, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Just to say, yeah, no, thanks a lot to all the speakers, obviously. That was really, really interesting and right from the ground. I guess one small question I have is just, I was in Gaza, Palestine for 2 years, and just imagining how crowded all the markets are and everything else is there. I'm just trying to understand what it's like on the streets now and how that works, because obviously it's so crowded in some of the areas that it must be either, I just want to know how different it is, how people are approaching that, and the extra different life that's brought to people. My only other point was, for a possible meeting, I do wonder, we have, I know it's a separate point, but there is, the people are starting to work on the Elbit campaigns, the arms factory campaigns more now, and there is one that was based, there's a few in the Midlands that are Elbit, and I just wondered if that could be a theme of almost like a sort of workshop-y idea with ideas and a few relevant people about Israel's largest weapons manufacturer, Elbit, because there's 2 factories in the Midlands, not that far from the, Birmingham. So I wondered if something like that could be thought about, because there's now 10 places for the Elbit factory, for Elbit all around the country, and we're building the campaign. So that was the 2 points.
Adi, would you be able to lead a workshop on Elbit, do you think? Because as you rightly say, we have them right on our doorstep. That's something
that would be great. That would be really good. And actually, to be honest, it's a lot easier to get people gathered around it on Zoom than it is if I actually went there and we tried to get people in one place. So the truth is, it's an opportunity to get people that wouldn't necessarily come in for a meeting, but we could all gather, get some ideas as to how we can take action online against Elbit, because there's never really been a big campaign online for them, but also build for the future.
Well, maybe a weekend afternoon workshop on Elbit then, a possible date for the diary, name and officers to consider.
Can I just say one more thing, because somebody sent me a message. First of all, it's on behalf of Medical Aid for Palestinians, and they, I know, are struggling to provide medical aid to the Palestinians, both in Gaza, particularly in Gaza and the West Bank. They are showing a film on website https://www.palestinefilm.org.uk, and it will most likely have a link to make a donation for the map as well. The map were in, well, I was expecting map to be here, but they can't be. So that's something for people to take a note of. And if anybody wants to receive information from us, they can put their email addresses on this group chat, and I'll pick them up and make sure they get the newsletter from the West Midlands PSC.
Thanks very much, Naeem, and thanks for the organisation of this as well. I'm going to call then people back in, call the speakers back in. If you could be fairly focused, please. It'll be sort of 3 or so minutes each, if we can, on key points, and hopefully you made a note of 1 or 2 of the questions on the way through, see which ones you might be able to address. Muhtasim, first of all then, please.
Okay.
Are you unmuted? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Really, thank you again for all this that you're doing, and I'm really also glad to see all my friends that I met in that visit when I was there. I'm really happy to be in this meeting, really. As maybe my point is to talk in a brief about this. Now, we know the situation in Palestine. Almost we know how it looks like. Now, maybe the next question is going to be what we, the Palestinians, expect from our friends around the world to do, how we expect the world to support us concerning the question concerning the medical aids and the medical issues. Yes, I do believe that our government is doing its best in calling and cooperation with our friends around the world to get what we need, but still we need more. We still need more medical aids and things like this to survive this crisis of coronavirus in Palestine. I do believe and add my vote to my friends concerning the Palestinian farmer. I find it a good area, the Palestinian farming. Supporting the Palestinian farmers is also a good is one of the good ways to support the Palestinian survival there, in addition to the medical aids in Palestine. I mean, yeah, concerning these 2 points.
Okay, thank you very much. Afshan, if I could just ask you to mute yourself, please. If you're not speaking, please leave the mute on, because the microphone off, otherwise it does disturb the meeting. Thanks. And thank you, Madison. Thanks very much. Kafia, are you with us? Kafia? I fear not. She did put in the chat that...
did Afshan wanted to say something?
Sorry, Naeem?
Did Afshan wanted to say something? Or?
No, I don't think so. He was speaking on the phone and had left his microphone on, that's all. But anyway, no, he'll say if he does, I think. Right. So, Kafia, you're back. That's great. Hi, Kafia. Any points in conclusion? You will need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you at the moment, Kafia.
I can't hear your...
Yeah, okay, just...
I didn't hear the question, I think.
Can just hear you if you continue speaking.
She can't hear you.
Okay, right. Perhaps we'll come back to see if this connection works, but it clearly isn't.
It's frozen.
Thank you. So we'll work our way back then through in reverse order. Mahmoud, if you'd like to make any closing remarks yourself.
Yeah, I just want to briefly answer some of the questions in relation to what can be done from outside. I think it's the time of advocacy, and we have to look for the sources of the information via the alternative media sources, because the mainstream is not showing these details of the stories from the really small stories. And in relation to the medical tests, I think we Palestinians, we succeeded in preventing the spread of the virus, but we didn't reach the medical level to know or to be sure about it, because we did only 40,000 tests since the beginning, while Israel did maybe 400,000 tests, something like that. And that is an indicator how is the inequality of the medical care and access is not equal among Palestinians and Israelis. And also in Israel itself, the Palestinians who are living there have really they are the pillars of the medical service in Israel. Just like the situation now, our strategy is to deal with each village as a cell, each family as a cell, and to avoid the physical contact between the cells. And this is easy to do in Palestine because we are spread and we are not a so dense country like the UK. And now the opportunity is now the people are paying attention to what is happening. The lesson is coming. We are talking about investing in weapons and mass destruction weapons. Why not to invest in improving our medical cares in such situation? And I agree with Adi that focusing on manufacturing weapons in the West Midlands will come out with results. And as activists, we have to think about alternative ways of implementing our actions in social distancing situation by focusing on online issues, especially now, for example, competitions for the prisoners in May for the Nakba and the refugees and so on. This will help us to create a shift within the globe, because I think now the people all over the world are investigating the systems that is running now, and they will evaluate them in the post-corona period.
Thank you very much, Marwan. Kafia, are you back with us?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Excellent. Great.
Hi.
Over to you.
Okay. I want to thank everybody who are sharing this meeting. And I think your presence here is the best support for Palestinian people in this crisis. And it's good for us to be with you, sharing our fears and our problems. And I wish we'll meet in a good condition. I want to say everyone in Palestine in this moment, they show how they deal with each other and support each other and provide what the other needs. And they return to the old days when all people worked together to make the good condition for everyone in the village or the city or everywhere. Thank you for this meeting. Really, it's a good meeting. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you, Kafia, and thank you again for joining us. And of course, it's 2 hours later where you are than where we are, is it not? I think so. Right, finally, just before we wrap up, there are some announcements in the chat, which I don't intend to read.
Martin, you're forgetting Marwan.
Whoa, hang on a minute, just let me finish if I can, please.
Okay.
There are some announcements in the chat, which all of us should be able to access. Now, I appreciate not everybody can, so can I just underline the message to let Naeem have your email if indeed you didn't get information of this meeting via email and would like to in the future. There've been notes from someone in Herefordshire, Jane, for example, welcome to the meeting, and a remote note from Stuart up saying the date of the meeting, which he referred to, which is 7:30, Tuesday the 12th of May, and he's put his email up there for you in the chat. If you can't read that because you don't have the chat available to you, I will read it out at the very end. Naeem.
No, I was saying you've forgotten Marwan.
I haven't. No, don't worry.
Okay.
I haven't finished yet.
Okay.
I'm just making
That's
sure
all
we're picking up the pieces. No, don't worry. So, without further ado then, calling the speakers back in reverse order. Marwan, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to continue with I think what Stuart talked about, the Palestinian within Israel, that there are about 600 cases at the moment. This is in a population which is 20% of the total population of Israel. It is almost double, I don't know if it's triple, the number of cases within the Israeli Jewish society. And again, this is reflecting the policy of discrimination in funding and for health services within the Palestinian Arab communities within 48. And but it's also, I want to connect it that this apartheid structure that discriminate against the Palestinians who are citizens of Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, it is actually the whole structure that we are addressing. And just to, I wanted to remind you, because it's important to know that this population, the Palestinians who stayed in 1948, they are, like everybody, paying taxes, paying their national insurance, and the level of discrimination is very high. Now, it is interesting, and it is also an issue, we compare it here to the UK, that the number of the health professional workers and other frontline are from within the Palestinian community. As we know also here, there are porters, nurses, doctors, consultants, that mostly from Black and ethnic minorities. And they are, as it is within Israel, here also they are facing immediate risk from the infection. And but it is funny in a way that this professional and these workers, they become highlighted in the Israeli media, showing them, as it is here, in fact, for, you know, we see a lot of ethnic minority consultants in the television and in the, which is, in Israel, it's been for a long time ignored, and so in a way, the coronavirus highlighted something which is overlooked and for a long time. The other point that I want to make, and this will be my final point, is there is a tension within the Israeli Jewish society as a result of the very strict closure and lockdown. And I know that already there was few demonstrations inside Israel with sort of, I wouldn't say unrest, but it is because of the division also within Israeli society. Poorer, more communities are paying higher price, and the compensation that is being paid by the Israeli state to those who are unemployed or lost their jobs is much lower than it's in the UK. So there's a tension there, and I will not be also surprised that, you know, that the economic pressure in Israel might lead to a rush change of policy, that in terms of the lockdown, to, you know, because there will be pressures from bottom up and from the economic structure to unlock the closure, to let the economy starting. So we don't know what's going to happen, but it is something that indicating also the division within Israeli Jewish society, that we, for us as people who engage in advocacy, it's important to know that and highlight that.
Thank you, Marwan, and thank you to everybody who has spoken, everyone who's joined the meeting. If you take the mute off, Naim, we can actually indicate in the traditional way, can we not?
People have to take their own mute.
If you unmute us all, then that can echo around.
Well done, everybody.
Thank you to all. It's become a little bit of the tradition in some of the meetings I've been in to actually leave the meeting open for a little while after it's in the sense of leaving the Zoom on for anybody who wants to do any further networking or other contacting. That is the end of the formal meeting. and thank